Hello, everybody, and welcome to Critical Hits Miyazaki. I'm Matthew.
I'm David.
I'm Kyle.
Today we're talking about My Neighbor Totoro, one of Miyazaki's earlier films, which talks about two little sisters, Mei, the younger one, and the older one, Sosuke, who together with their father have moved to a more rural area of Japan to help with their mother, who is in a hospital right now. Along the way, they meet and befriend some spirits of the forest, the largest and friendliest of which is Totoro. And together they go through, many adventures in this slice of life film. Well, so for me, this is the second time I've seen this movie, so I was able to see it once before, and it's a really interesting, almost different feeling from the other Miyazaki films that you witness, because this one's very straightforward. It's just open and shut. The ending's almost abrupt with how it just has this little moment and it just wants to capture that and then let go. Huh. So for me, I really appreciate it because it's clearly geared for children, and it's just it's full of goodness. There's hardly any, I would say, evil or scariness at all in the film. There are certainly very emotional scenes, but overall it's just a fun, loving film that just feels good-hearted and wonderful.
Well, yeah, I know for me, this was the first time I saw the film, and I had even been told beforehand that it was very, it was very simple and straightforward and very slice of life, and even so, it kind of surprised me with just how simple, not in a bad way, but just how simple it was. I mean, remember, when I finished watching it, my initial attitude was like, wow, that was it, and that it just didn't. There's not a whole lot of resolution, and at the same time, the plot doesn't really require that it be there. And so I think this was really an interesting example of Miyazaki's work, because it's not his earliest movie, but it's the one that really sort of put him on the map. And yet, in a lot of ways, I feel like it's the most Miyazaki. He's known for having plot structures in films that are unusual, and this kind of takes that idea and just pushes it to its extreme.
I like Dave. This is the first time I've seen this movie, and I think you're right. It was story-wise a very simple movie. At the same time, there's a lot of thought going on here, so you're able to appreciate it on a lot of different levels. I can't wait to come back to this one and get another look at it. And on the outside, it's got the cute for cuteness sake kind of attitude about it. It almost felt like an anime version of Winnie the Pooh or something like that. And I think he was doing a lot in this, particularly with the relationship between humans and nature. The Japanese spiritualism and the British romanticism seem to have a lot going for them. And the way in which he mimicked some of those British styles of storytelling. You see a little bit of Alice in Wonderland. And
absolutely.
And some of those other children coming in contact with these.
As always, I mean, that's certainly not the first time. I don't think, even in the films we've looked at, that's not the first time the Alice in Wonderland parallels
No, he clearly likes that one.
Yeah. Well, there's something about that with Alice in Wonderland and with Miyazaki where it's the intermingling of the supernatural or the spiritual with the natural. So, for me, one of the big scenes where in this movie that we talk about is there's a big tree basically in their backyard in this film. At one point, the father goes up to the tree with his daughters, and they talk about the spiritual life there, and he also makes this comment about how long ago mankind and trees were once friends, and afterwards he leads his daughters in a prayer to the tree, like thanking it for watching out over his daughters. And for me, it's a very interesting moment because it shows this desire to be back to that point where we have the human, the natural, and the spiritual are all just together. There is no conflict, there is no problem, there's no destruction that's ripping them apart, but rather they're all friends. Because as the movie's anything, I certainly think it's built on that spiritual friendship.
But something that's really interesting about this Miyazaki movie, it's not like some of his other movies where you see a lack of balance.
Right.
And you then sense the need for a community with nature. But here you have this rural Japanese setting where you have shrines and other spiritual imagery constantly surrounding the people in their everyday lives.
In fact, what's interesting about this film is in what we've looked at so far. I mean, in Spirited Away, and the other ones we've looked at, it's been so, because the settings have been so strange in and of themselves. While you see a lot of the spirituality, it's sort of in this film, because you're seeing people just going about their regular lives, it makes the instances of Japanese spirituality, it makes it stick out that much more. And instead of, bleeding in to the rest of the supernatural elements of the story, it actually makes the supernatural elements that are there, it makes them much more poignant and much more, I think, effective, actually.
I think it's really interesting, in this movie, there's not that problem that we see so often. So, like, the other three that we've looked at are looking at, we have Princess Mononoke, we have right on the front, the boar god is injured by a bullet, and, like, clearly, right at the front, there's technology and nature fighting each other.
Yeah.
The same thing happens in, we have Spirited Away, where the human world and the spiritual are so different they can't intermingle. Mm-hmm. And this girl has to figure out how she as a human can work in the spiritual world. And then in Howl's Moving Castle, we have the technology, the bombs are destroying all the beautiful nature there is in the world. Mm-hmm. But in this one, we have none of that. We just have the humans in the environment with the natural and therefore the spiritual.
Well, yeah. Well, it's almost like this movie. It's showing the ideal world that the world and his other movies fail to be.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a very Eden-esque feeling to the setting, and to the point that even with the one real source of tension, at least the continuing source of tension in the movie, is that the two girls' mother is sick. Even that is to a certain extent remedied by the natural setting and the spiritual world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's even interesting because in this environment, human technology still has a place. Mm-hmm. So, like, for me, when I talk about that, I mean the very famous, iconic bus scene where the girls give Totoro an umbrella, which is clearly a human device.
Yeah.
And Totoro uses it, and it doesn't... it's not like a bomb. It doesn't destroy nature. It doesn't upset anything.
In fact, it makes him really damn happy.
Right, yeah, like he's laughing and jumping up and down because he's able to use this thing and enjoy nature with it still.
Yeah, and the object, which is the umbrella, what makes it different from a lot of other examples of technology is rather than destroying nature or even taking away the human experience from nature, it's something that allows humans to interact, go outside when it's raining. It allows humans to interact more with nature.
Something that might otherwise push you out of the environment.
Exactly.
To be there.
Yeah, so it shows that, like, in this film in particular, I think, Miyazaki's not saying technology's bad.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, there's a place for technology, even in nature, which is, oftentimes, they're put against each other. So I think it's really interesting how they can be reconciled in this way.
Mm-hmm. You brought up the bus stop scene, which is just beautiful all around to look at. But I think it's hearkening to another theme that's going on here, which is that this is not just the idyllic state, but the fact that you have this go-between theme that's constantly happening. The bus passing from one area to another.
Well, one of the most iconic images of the movie, actually, is that Totoro, he rides around in this giant... You really need to see the movie, because simply describing it really doesn't do it justice, but it's a bus that is also a cat. And I mean that I mean that quite literally. Like the cat and the bus are one organism. It's not like a cat. It's not a bus that's driven by a cat. It's a bus that is a cat. and so, anyways, that's it's an interesting example. That's thematically so interesting. It's because it's something technological, and yet it's clearly a spiritual thing.
Yeah,
organic, spiritual.
And it's one thing that ends up being very helpful and very friendly. And so, in seeing the cat bus, this is one movie where technology isn't really condemned, which is what you so often see in Miyazaki movies.
But with the idyllic paradise kind of state here of with the unity with nature and the kids being able to interact with these forest spirits, you also get this sort of passage that's happening. The girls are growing up. In fact, they have a very hard space to be in as a child with a sick mother like this. You almost get the sense that if the mom were to die, they wouldn't see the world the same way anymore. You would. I don't know that they like the adults. They might not be able to see Totoro anymore once they pass out of that. And it feels... I don't know. Is it just me, or does there seem to be something going on where this is a childlike state that you have to be in to experience these things?
I think you're right on, because right at the front of the movie, the girls meet this old lady they call Granny. And one of the things Granny says is the girls think they've encountered these spirits.
Soot gremlins?
Yeah, the soot sprites, yeah. And the thing she says is, she used to see them when she was a child, but she doesn't see them anymore. So this idea that if you are a child, you have like a lens like that you get to see things through that no one else does.
It's a little Polar Express or something.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think that's the reason why May gets to go to the tree and see Totoro before anyone else does. And when she brings other people, he's not there anymore.
Well, I love that the first thing she has to say is, "I'm not lying," when the other people can't see it.
Yeah.
It's so important that it's real.
Yeah, and there's just there's this beauty of childhood truth versus like adult truth.
Well, yeah, and that's so fascinating when you compare that kind of theme to Miyazaki's other movies, which often have such a harsh view of like the adult world.
Yeah,
that it really does seem like I could very easily see this movie being the one that's closest to his heart, because it seems like very much, even though the ending is kind of ambiguous, it still seems like his happiest movie.
It's overall positive.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this actually says a lot about Miyazaki as a person.
Yeah,
because in his other works we see the state of chaos and the lack of balance that you have in relationship between humans and other humans. We see the war themes, we see pollution, humans and nature, that relationship being out of whack, and
even the disruption of the spiritual life, like humans trying to destroy or deny the spiritual reality.
Honestly, this Miyazaki to me feels like a man who has two ways of thinking going on for him. He has the way that he certainly has the way that he knows the world is, which involves all of these very negative things. And we see very, very limited glimpses of that through the children in this movie, especially in their relationship with their mom.
Yeah.
And what she's struggling with. And in a way, it becomes more powerful because it's on such a personal level that we're tapping into here. And it's frightening in a completely different way than something like Mononoke is.
But we also see the ideal world here.
We do see the ideal world here, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. We have what is, I guess Miyazaki might call it what is real and what is ideal, and he's a very, very much romantic in that way, in that there seems to be the way in which he knows the world, the way he knows the world to be, and the way he wants it to be, and the way he wants kids to be able to grow up. This space that he wants explored and that he wants to preserve. And I think that might be one of the reasons he seems to write for kids so much, is this particular care for them and the way they see the world, and wanting them to continue to live in that space even as the world is a difficult place. He seems to be a man who sees the trouble but wants to help others at the same time, and is trying to reconcile these truths in his own life as well.
All right, guys, you have any closing thoughts, Dave?
You should see this movie, because as much as we've talked about it, there's an interesting quality to it. You just kind of have to get immersed into it, I think, to really understand what it's about. And so, more so even than any of the other movies we've talked about, I'd really suggest going out of your way and seeing this. I mean, if nothing else, you'll finally understand what that one, giant Japanese teddy bear-like figure is that you've no doubt seen somewhere. So, really, go see it.
For me, this is just another one of those cases where I'm struck by how Western Miyazaki is as well. His use of Alice in Wonderland and this style of storytelling, but putting it into a Japanese setting, just shows his abilities as an artist and as a storyteller, in just how he manages to sync things that you might not initially think go together. But I think he does it beautifully.
For me, I'm just going to almost repeat what you guys said, but I absolutely agree with Dave. But this is a movie that you should see, especially since it's so important to Miyazaki. It's what made him made people internationally aware of him and what he's doing. There's those very iconic scenes like the bus stop or the kids on top of the tree with Totoro that are so, I think, important not just to Miyazaki's works, but to animation. They have riveting effects, not just in Eastern animation, but also Western. And for me, I think those alone are reasons enough. But also, this is a really just good movie that is enjoyable at any age. and really shows the strength that Miyazaki has in presenting a beautiful world.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, thank you for joining us for Monthazaki. Be sure to be here next week when we discuss Miyazaki's final film, The Wind Rises. Thanks for listening.
Catch you later.
See ya.